Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Splendor and Unity Crash Course. In this episode we're going to be creating a little dropped coin out of the broken cube, so getting right into it. So let's not use a cube for this, obviously. Let's just hit X, delete that, Shift A, and let's add a cylinder. Okay, and you get options without clicking anywhere. You'll get this little drop down as soon as you add something. And you can change the geometry here. So I can change this to 24. I think that's enough. That'll change how much geometry is rather bring there. You can choose how much it fills the caps, or which way it fills the caps. So nothing, be empty, right? Whoops. The triangle fan is something we're going to want to do. We're going to create that ourselves. If we hit Shift Z, we can see in wireframe what it's doing there. And the N-gon, which I mentioned before, we're actually going to leave it at N-gon, which is the default, and we're going to fix that ourselves, so that we know how. So let's go with that. 24 N-gon, good. Let's go into edit mode. I can either snap to the right and hit R on 90, rotate that like that, or I can just stay where I am, hit R, X, 90, and it'll rotate just on the X like that. Now let's scale that on the Y. We pretty much have a shape of a coin already. Let's go into face mode. So we can select both of these faces, and we use our eye option to inset. Let's come down maybe there, I suppose. We can hit E to extrude, and right click to just snap it back to where it is. Right, and what we have is an extra edge there. That's exactly what we want. So we can hit S and Y, and these will scale by their center of mass, so they'll scale into each other. Right? That's what we want. Just come down, I guess, there. Okay, let's inset again. I guess I'm gonna scale it out a little bit again. SY. I'd inset one more time. Let's just go there because we'll do smooth shading. One more. Now deselect one of them. M to merge, and we can hit merge at center. Okay, and the same thing over here. So say this face wasn't here. Say we just delete this face, and we just have this ring here with an empty space in the middle. That's the same kind of idea. So what we're doing here is merging vertices. So if we go into vertex mode, we can see which ones we're going to merge. We can hit M and at center. Okay, boom, perfect. Now we go into object mode, right click and click shade smooth. There we have pretty much the shape of our coin. Now what we're going to do is create our own normal map by duplicating this mesh, sculpting it, and then baking that sculpt onto here as a normal map geometry detail, so that we don't actually have to have, say, 10K triangles or whatever, how much detail it looks like. It's just going to be 480. So that's good. We don't need to create a LOD system for this. We'll actually create a LOD group component ourselves in Unity this time. We'll just have one mesh, and it'll just erase after a certain distance, because these are going to be a little animated pickup. Alright, so let's shrink that down, obviously. I think that's okay. G and Z, and we'll move that up so that's sitting on the floor, right? Now our animation later will determine, and this can be hovering a tiny bit because it's actually going to be. That's fine. Next we need to UV unwrap this. So first things first, let's make a loop cut right here. Control R, click, right click. So basically that'll give us two flat sides, right, on our texture sheet, and that's perfectly good. I'm gonna hit Control E, mark seam, and that's where our seam will be. So we'll hit A. Let's go into UV editing. Okay, and it's unwrapped like that as a cylinder initially, I guess. U, unwrap, boom. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So again, you don't want your islands touching. Also, to mention, the cube, we unwrapped that pretty poorly. So and it's already in our Unity game. We can actually edit that, and it'll fix everything in Unity as well without having to do very much. So I'll show you guys how to do that as well, maybe at the end of the episode or in the beginning of the next. Let's go pack. Average island scale is nice. It's already going to be like that, but what it does is it basically, if I hit L and I scale this up, average island scale is going to change them back to be basically uniform to each other, depending on how they actually are in the mesh, which is great. So this is perfect actually, because they're not they're far away. This is good. Let's leave it like this, maybe a tiny bit bigger. Okay, perfectly fine. So now we can paint this. The first thing we need to do is go to shading, right? Because our cube has a default material on it, but when you add a new mesh, it doesn't. but we can just add that particular default material to this. If you don't want to, just hit this minus button, or if it's not there already, you can click new, and they'll just add a new material. We can call this material coin, right? Change the color to, I don't know, yellow. Yellow. Okay. Sure. So actually, I'm going to change this back to white because what I want to do is I want to paint this myself. So let's go to texture paint. Let's say new image. So if you don't actually have an image loaded up, it won't be the two little pieces of paper. It'll just be a button called new. So we'll change this to coin underscore texture. I'm gonna say albedo because we're gonna have a normal map as well. 1K is okay. 512 would probably work too because it's going to be a smaller object. I don't want it totally black initially. We can actually set this color to be what we want it to be. Sure. Okay. Great. Now, what I said before, this texture doesn't actually exist till we save it, so let's go image, save as. Go to Crash Course Textures, coin albedo, great. I don't want to compress it. 16 is good. Color depth, okay. Save. Okay, so now we can edit this, and if we do, we have to, this little star will come up here. That means we have to save this image, otherwise this white line will not be there. Any edits you do, any changes you make, you have to save that image to the same destination. So I'm going to Control Z and undo that. Let's go into shading and add that in. Shift A, texture, image texture, plug in the color, right? Right now it's going to be black because there's no image there. We can just click open, or we can click this drop down because it's within our project already. But if we click open and we go to that Crash Course Textures, it's right here. Boom. So that's the best way to do that. Come over to texture paint. Now we can paint it. So we can paint on here if we want, right? I think before I do any of this, I want to actually sculpt the normal map and then paint on the detail. That's a fun way to do it. So now that we have this, that's great. Let's go. Let's create our high poly sculpt. I'm gonna click. I'm gonna save this actually. Let's call this coin asset. Save. Good. Come back to layout. We can click this little material preview. We can come down here or click texture, whichever works best for you. Let's rename this object. So you can rename it here, and this little square is your object tab. So it shows your entire transform. The name, we can rename this here, right? And it'll rename it right there. So I'm gonna call this coin. Right, same thing. You can double click, or you can click the object and hit F2. Good. Okay, so I want to Shift D and duplicate this. I want to hide the first coin, and I'm gonna call this one coin high poly. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna add a new modifier. Let's use this one called Subdivision Surface. Now there's a little icon there that actually displays exactly what it does, initially anyway. Don't use if you don't use simple, this icon right here is displaying what it does, so I can try and demonstrate that. So if we go into edit mode, we can see our actual geometry, right? Now what this is doing is it's kind of rounding around each corner, right? So if the more geometry I add, the more it'll round those sharp edges. So I think what we want to do, we can also click uncheck optimal display, and you can see the triangles you're getting, the geometry you're getting, and your triangles down here at the bottom, of course, so we can just keep cranking this up, really. You can go pretty high. I think one thing I would like to actually do is I'm going to bring this down a little bit and just go into our sculpt. Let's select these two vertices, hit X, delete vertices. So that's actually going to delete quite a bit. That's okay. What I want to do is select a ring, and we're going to try a new option up here called grid fill. Now your mesh might look a little strange because this modifier that you have, it might be hard to see some of the vertices. As you can see this ring in the inside here, the vertices are hidden. You can click this little button and it'll wrap your selections, like your selectable edges, faces, and vertices around what the actual shape of it is. So that's convenient, but you're going to get like some, it's not going to act exactly the way it is without this modifier. So just keep that in mind that it's kind of stretching. So what I want to do here is try this grid fill and see if this will make better geometry with the subdivision. So I'm going to click face here. I'm going to click grid fill. Okay, and that's actually probably going to be a little bit better than initially all those crazy shapes that it was making. So let's do the same thing over here. Face, grid fill. Now you need to select something that's basically a closed, not a closed loop, sorry, an open loop, and it will try and fill it like that, like whatever makes sense. And that's awesome. So Shift C. So that's I want more like that than what it was. Let's just crank this up. Something fierce. 2.5 million is a little crazy. So let's just go to 600K. Depending on your computer, this might actually start to lag. So just be careful with this. Maybe you don't need to go too high. Let's apply that.